I'm so thrilled to be here this morning. Just going to, there we go. All right, so the recording button has started. So good morning. My name is Lynn Leach, and I'm so pleased to be here again today with you. And today's project, we're going to look at how to create a fresh green centerpiece. And I've decided we've got almost half an hour. So I thought I would show you a couple of different options. The first being maybe for those of you out there who aren't super confident about your florist skills. Maybe it's your first attempt. Maybe it's something you wanted to do with grandkids. So I'm going to show you how simple it is. We're going to ramp up for the second project to something that's maybe a little more standard for a table centerpiece if you're hosting this year. But let's start with the first one. So as far as supplies, I'm going to talk a little bit as we go along. The first centerpiece, I really wanted to focus on supplies that you could collect just from your property. And so I think that's important for a few reasons. It keeps the cost minimal or at zero. It gives you the exercise and the fresh air that we should be getting every single day. And it's super creative because it forces you to go out and take a look at your property and sort of see what's still beautiful at this time of the year. It is very dark and dreary and rainy out there this morning, but if you go out and actually take a look, there's still so much beauty at the end of November outdoors. And so I think by going out and accessing it, you can reap all the benefits of it. So the first thing that you're going to need is a container. And I've gone very fancy here. I'm a bit of a thrifter. I believe this cute little sleigh came from maybe St. Vincent de Paul or Value Village. I can't remember because I hit them all. And the price tag's still on it, $3. And so I love that sort of a find. You don't even actually have to go out and shop. You could use an old Christmas coffee cup. You could use even just an old cereal bowl or a dish, something that you've got in your kitchen. And what I've done is I've put a little bit of floral foam in there. So the green spongy stuff, generally called oasis. And I've just cut a little piece and soaked it. That's important. I think that's, oh, somebody's waving at me here. So, okay, so you've got your floral foam inside your little container, and I've got my little sleigh here. And this morning I went out in the rain before it got too terrible, and I went out to my yard and I collected a few things that I had, still left from the season. One of the greens that I love to use, and it's not a traditional green that you could buy at the florist or the garden center, but a lot of you have this shrub, and it's yew, Y-E-W. What I love about it is it's plentiful. Most people have it. I love how dark green it is. And so it provides a beautiful base to start. And so basically you're just going to cut and trim. If you're a person that likes to follow guidelines and rules, you generally want your arrangement to be about twice the size of your container. That's twice as high, maybe twice as wide, but not bigger than 3 times, or it gets very easily overwhelmed. So those are general rules. I'll be honest with you. I encourage people to break the rules and do what you think looks beautiful. Be creative, enjoy that creative process. And if it means throwing some of the rules out the window, then that's just fine. Certainly, if you're working with your grandkids to do this, they don't think about rules. They do what they love, and it always turns out beautiful. So always take a lesson from their inhibitions. They just go for it. And I'm going to encourage you to do the same. So this little sleigh is not very big. And so I've just stuck a few pieces of that, of the yew. So already it's starting to actually look like something. It's got a little bit of greenery there. And in this particular case, I'm going to keep the greens, when I poke them in, I'm kind of keeping them upright. And the reason I'm doing that is my container's so pretty. I don't really want to hide the sleigh. So I'm kind of going more upright. What else did I cut out of my garden today? This is one of my favorites, and I wish we had smell-o-vision. It's silver fir, and anything in the fir family, whether you use the bottom boughs of your Christmas tree this year, or whether you actually have a fir tree out in the garden. If you don't, you should plant one. It has that beautiful citrusy Christmas smell that's so classic of, of when you think of what Christmas smells like. So I love to use a little bit of that, particularly in centerpieces, because as it's sitting on maybe a side table or your food table, you are going to appreciate the fragrance coming off of that. And again, I'm just putting that in there, making sure that it's down into the oasis. If your oasis is soaked really well, you'll find that they just push in there just so beautifully. So I'm just going to tuck in a little bit of that, just enough to kind of get that fragrance. You also start to get different textures and different colors of green. All right. I've cut too much here. I don't even know what to start with. I've got so many beautiful things. I am going to go with a green that, again, you may have. It's a little bit more of a delicate texture, and it's called hemlock. And we have a hemlock tree. We have a few hemlock trees in the back, and they're such a beautiful green to use. I love that they're dark green on one side and have a silver look on the back side. And so for something like this, I would put in a few sprigs and I would use them upside down so that you can appreciate a little bit of that silver in there. But again, these decisions are all up to you. Something I always have enjoyed as a horticultural therapist is working with a whole group of people, maybe have 20 people in a room, getting the same materials, having the same container, and having the same instruction. And at the end of the program, looking at 20 completely different, unique projects. And so again, I encourage it. I think that's one of the benefits to doing your own rather than just buying it pre-made. You go to the grocery store now and they've got about 800 pots all sitting out and they're all identical. Same ribbon, same greens, same look. And I think there's something nice about putting your own unique spin on things. So that's probably all you need for greens. So you can see that only took a couple of minutes. The other thing that I want to start adding in here is some color and some texture. I went out and I trimmed a little bit off of my dogwood shrub, and dogwood has this spectacular red color. So again, I'm going to put a little bit in here. This is where you can kind of cheat on the rules, and if you want to get real creative, you can go a little bit higher. I'm thinking, the dogwood's going to blow out the end of the sleigh here with the speed it's traveling. That's my image here this morning for this little one. So we're going to put in a little bit of that dogwood. I think there are a few things that you can do, again, that create a unique project for you. And one of them is ribbon. This sleigh actually comes with ribbon. So if you're scared of making a bow, choose something that's already got a little bit of ribbon on it, and you can cheat that a little bit. I always defer back to my Welsh and Scottish heritage, and I'm always attracted to a good plaid bow. And I just kind of whipped that up. You can buy pre-made bows, or Smart Linda, in our conversation just before everyone got here this morning, she was talking about how when she gets a poinsettia or maybe has an arrangement given to her, that she keeps the little pick or the little bow, all the little doodads that are in there. And so if you can do that, you can just pull them out and they're ready to go. So I would just stick that in there. When you're choosing ribbon, anything goes, of course, but I look at scale. So your container in this case is pretty tiny. So I've gone with a fairly narrow ribbon. If you went with one of the big outdoor ones, it would very quickly overwhelm your project. So one of the other things that I collected out in the garden today, and it's one of my favorite materials, and yes, I know it's brown, but I still love brown, even, well, especially in November. And these are the remnants of your ferns. Everyone has ferns, or most people have ferns in their garden. It's one of those things that grows like wild. These are from an ostrich fern, and they almost have the look of a beautiful feather. Gorgeous, gorgeous texture. And I actually really love the brown against the green. If you go for a walk out in the wilderness, you can find these native ferns, and they're a little bit smaller, a little more delicate, and less like a feather, more like a little string of little pearls up that branch. So both very, very pretty, and adds just something unique, something textural. So again, we're just going to stick those in. One of the craziest floral rules that I learned when I was doing first learning arrangements is that if you put something in, you should never remove it because it creates an air hole in the oasis. So for good reason, if you're a professional. We're not professionals here. And so if you put something in and you don't like where you've put it, or you don't like how it looks, pull it out and start again. Just pull it out and work away until you are happy with it. And I think if you remember, that anything can be changed. If you really think that it's a disaster, pull out the whole chunk of oasis and start again. It doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. In fact, I think that that's maybe one of the things I like about this artistic stuff is if you've made it with good intention, beautiful materials, and even just a little smidgen of creativity, it's going to be lovely. So, trust in your creative instincts. So to finish this little guy off, you could add a whole variety of things. Again, I really go on crazy. I love to add like little Christmas balls, and certainly you can get these at the dollar store, or again, sometimes off of little arrangements that you get. They come in little packages, little bells, little stars, and you could simply just wire those in for wiring. It's the same as what we've used for wreaths. I did a wreath workshop for you last year, and it's just this beautiful little paddle wire. I like 24 gauge because I think that it's easier on the hands. And you're just going to slide that wire through there, and you can wire that right on just for a little sparkle. If you were doing an arrangement and it was very, very close to Christmas, you could add something like red carnations. You could go to the florist shop and choose a variety of different things that you could add in that looked quite Christmassy. If you're doing it this far ahead, if you stick really with greens and dogwood, and I'm going to add in a few rose hips, which is a beautiful berry that you can find if you go out for a walk. This centerpiece will actually last you no problem into the new year. If you start adding some of those florist items like carnations, you'll probably get more like 2 weeks out of it. And so that hopefully helps you time your projects a little bit. So the rose hips this year are just lovely. They kind of come with a warning, use at your own risk. They do have those rose thorns on them, so they're very, very prickly. But they do add just a little bit of pizzazz. So it's a little bit, I think it's worth the little bit of danger you're in. I know I'm just about done the project because I'm really searching for a spot where there's room in the oasis to put this. That's your sign you're done. So and it doesn't take a whole lot. 2 or 3 little sprigs is all you need. There we go. Yeah, I can't see the front, so hopefully it looks okay. It looks pretty good from the back, but that's all it takes. So really, if I wasn't, talking, I could probably go out, collect a few things, jam some greens in there, and you could have something in under 10 minutes. So a pretty simple and easy thing, I think, to make lovely gifts. If you're going to somebody's house, for a nice Christmas party or a meal, it's nice to take a little something. And I think that a small arrangement like this is just ideal. So I do want to get on to the second project, which is sort of our main event. And this would be something that you could create. It would be very suitable if you have a family gathering around the table. It could sit at the center. And I would suggest this is something that we're probably going to keep quite long and low so that people can talk over it. For this sort of a thing, I look for a container that's basically the shape that I want to make it. So in this case, I'm going to keep it narrow because I always battle on the Christmas table for space for all the food. And so I don't want to go huge, especially I've gone quite narrow with this one. And again, I've dropped just a chunk of Oasis in there that I had soaking in the sink for a while, make sure it's nice and wet. And yeah, and so we're going to start. So this one, I actually start with whatever you're going to use in the center for height. In this case, I'm going to use dogwood. You could use small birch branches. You could use candles, although just a word of warning, I actually think real candles put in with these greens is generally a bad idea if you're going to light them. It's asking for trouble because these greens, even after a couple of days, start to dry out. And boy, when they go up, they really go up. It makes a very, very exciting Christmas dinner if your centerpiece gets on fire. So they have great, basically fake candles now. My sister had some at Thanksgiving, and they looked so real, but they were actually artificial. So that's a lot safer. So you could do something like that in the middle. And I generally, if you're going to put something like that in, I would put my candles in first. Make sure they're in there where you want them, and then you build your arrangement around it. So in this case, we are going to use some dogwood. And I'm going to try to be very symmetrical. I'm going to try to make it look the same side, or the same from each side, no matter where you're viewing it. I struggle with that, I'll be honest. I'm an artistic spirit and not really a symmetrical person, but I'm going to do my best. All right, so we're going to put a few of those in there. In the interest of time, I'm going very, very quickly. If I were doing this as a gift or doing this on your table, of course, you would be taking your time a little bit more. I think the folks at Artsy are here today and following along. And certainly when you watch the video back, you're going to be able to pause and take your time putting your greens in, and then press play when you're on to the next step. So that gives a little bit of height. Again, when it's sitting on your dining room table, I hate doing something that's too tall unless you don't like the person that's sitting across from you and you want a little bit of height to block them. But I think back when I was a kid, we used to do that with our cereal boxes so that we didn't have to look at the sisters. But for your holiday table, probably you want to keep it fairly low. So, so that's your start. Then you're going to sort of build your base. For the last project, I really wanted to show off the sleigh, and so I kept things kind of high. In this case, I really actually want to use some greens that will sort of soften the edge of the container. I'm going to start, I think, with this one, which is one that I purchased. We have some amazing local garden centers where these greens are readily available. What I generally do is I collect a whole bunch, and then I go and I purchase some of the fancy ones. This is one of those fancy ones, and it is again another fir, because I love the fir, and it's noble fir. Fraser fir is also very, very similar, and again, like hemlock, it has that nice silvery back. And what I like to do is, we're going to get the right pieces here. And we're just going to kind of tuck those in really low so that they're going to kind of sit and look over the edge of your container. we're going to sort of build, we're going to build this one from the bottom up. And again, I would be more particular with this, but we'll try to keep us on time. Okay. This is such a fun project to do with a group. So invite a friend over, put on some Christmas music, go and collect a few greens, go for a walk, come back and start crafting. And it can be such a fun adventure to sort of create together, help each other, get feedback from each other. Make sure you choose someone kind. Okay. So again, I'm not going to go crazy around the back here. I want to kind of focus on the face, on the part that's facing you. Okay, so that would be my fur, which helps kind of cover the edge of the container, but it also gives that little bit of fragrance that I was talking about before that you so want. Just that smell. It's not an overpowering smell, but the smell when you come in of that fresh green and sort of Christmassy. So the next green that I'm actually going to use in there is one that you can collect or purchase, and it's white pine, and it's one of our native evergreens. What I love about white pine is it's soft. It even looks soft, those beautiful long needles, and it's got a gorgeous natural shape to put in these centerpieces. Some greens I think are more, have a shape that's more conducive to good centerpiece making, and white pine is certainly one of them. Things like spruce are very, very stiff and prickly, and sometimes don't do exactly what you want them to do. The white pine is very forgiving in that if you don't know what you're doing, it will do what you want it to do without you having to do too much to it. And again, just builds a little bit of texture. So white pine is one of those ones that I really love. I'm going to see if I can find a longer piece here to build a little bit of length. I've got a few. So you could go quite narrow if you've got a lot of food on your table and you're concerned about space. If you want to go a little bit longer than your arrangement, than the actual container, what I do is I put in a couple of longer pieces at the ends. So we're going to build it so that it's sort of looking a whole lot longer than the container actually is. And it's very simple to do by just adding a few pieces that come out. You can see already it's getting a better longer shape. Maybe you put a lot of leaves in your table and you want a centerpiece that sort of reflects that. So there, just, I don't know whether I'm equal or not. Again, I struggle with the whole symmetry thing. Again, I've used that hemlock upside down, simply for the reason that it's a better shape upside down. I feel like it suits more to have it kind of that curve down. So the other green that I'm going to add here, just a little bit, again, because I love that dark green and I love the way it fills in, is a little bit of the hue. And I'm going to use that very, very low. Again, we're trying to keep that centerpiece lower. I've maybe gone real wild with my dogwood, but I'd have to put it on the table. If you decide that it is too long, this is just a little tip. Rather than just kind of coming along and cutting at the top, pull them out and cut them from the bottom so that you have these nice branchy ends still on there without losing that look. And you can see that it really does not take very many greens to get this filled in and starting to look really like something. Just another one. Okay. Now, I generally, like I say, I try to keep these affordable. And part of that, part of doing that is collecting as much as I can. Now, different years, collecting is easier than others. This year, I had to really search for Ontario cedar, which I've got a little bit here. Anybody who's a gardener understands that this year was probably one of the driest seasons on record. And so water lovers like birch, or like birch, willow, dogwood is one of those water lovers, but Ontario cedar loves lots of moisture through the growing season. And so I have found that it's a little bit rough looking. If you've got a nice low area or near you or in your property where they grow, you'll find that they look a little bit better. Cedar is one of those things, if I can find it and it looks half decent, I always use it, because again, I love that smell. I love the shape of it. It's sort of that flat, looks like a little hand out front. So we're going to put a little bit of that in for texture. But you can really, I think, up the ante on your arrangement by purchasing a few things. When we did the wreath workshop, I talked about magnolia. I think maybe we talked about seeded eucalyptus, which is another one you can find at the florist that's beautiful. What I chose for today's project is incense cedar. So it's again another cedar, and I knew Ontario cedar was a bit rough this year. So I was looking for something a little bit fancier with that same look and smell. And incense cedar is very, very pretty. It's got a lovely shape. I love the way that it sort of has that really natural, pretty fall. But what makes it very, very pretty is it has these bright yellow seed heads on it. And you can readily find this at the florist or at a garden center, sometimes even a grocery store at the front if you see it. But I like to add that in. Again, it's sort of a fancier one. And those little seed heads, or if you can find a green with some little pine cones on it already, is such a lovely way to make it look very professional without us being professional, which is always a little bit of the trick. Now, gotta keep an eye on time here. We're just going to put in a few of those. And again, I love the way that that falls over the edge of the container. Okay. Starting to kind of take shape, has that sort of very natural elongated shape that you sort of want for your holiday table. And you would just kind of continue to build until you're satisfied with how that's looking. Again, by choosing just a few little longer pieces at the end, you can kind of cheat your container situation a little bit and get a little bit of length. And once you get it built, you don't really notice that the container's substantially smaller. All you just see is this beautiful, beautiful shape and size. So can't see from the front, but I think we are getting there. Again, mine's not going to be as perfect as yours is, but you'll get the basic instruction. Okay, so I'm going to say that that is probably good for greens in the interest of time so that we can kind of continue on. And I would do the same on the back side so that both sides look exactly the same or reasonably so. So at this point, this is sort of when I start to fill in with some of my fun things. I actually went out to the garden this morning, was able to collect a little bit of holly. Somebody else was talking about having some holly in their garden. What I like about holly, or you could use boxwood, is it creates a different texture. You have a lot of things with needles. And so it's nice to have something with a little oomph to it. My holly sadly only had about 7 berries on the entire shrub this year. So I'm going to supplement with the rose hips to give that berry look. Again, year to year, when you're collecting supplies, some things are great, some things aren't. You have to just roll with it and not get too caught up. You can always find something that does the trick. Okay, so a few pieces of holly. If you wanted to do a holly and ivy theme, you know, you could cut a little chunk of ivy and have that sort of trailing out across your table. That would be a really pretty way to finish it. If you didn't have holly, most people have boxwood. That's another really pretty leafed green that you could use to sort of break up the needle texture within your arrangement and add just a little bit of pizzazz. So in this case, I am going to add a few berries. Pine cones would be really pretty in here. Again, I would look at scale. If you're thinking pine cones, I wouldn't get carried away with giant spruce cones. I am going to show you a few of the different ones, but I would just take into consideration the scale and the size of your arrangement. It's very easy to overwhelm it by adding in something that's humongous. I'm always amazed at how quickly, even just a little bit of color in there, the berries start to really make it look like something. I love rose hips, especially on the table. I'm picky about what berries I use in my containers because a lot of us use fancy tablecloths. Rose hips, if they drop, and they don't drop very readily, if they do drop, it's a very dry berry. So you're not going to get juicy stains. They just sort of drop and dry up. So it's actually a really nice one to use that's not going to create a mess if it does drop. Okay, so getting our berries in there. And again, just sort of extending that arrangement. I can't see what I'm doing from the front. And I know when I watch this back, I'm going to be like, wow, that looked hideous from the front. But we're going to guess. I'm just going with it. And again, this is just instruction and you're going to do a beautiful job. I'd love to add some pine cones. You could go, little white spruce cones are just a perfect size. They could be individually wired in, wrapped on a wire and then tucked in. Again, on a centerpiece, and because they don't need to be in oasis, you can always cheat that a little bit by tucking them in. They'll sit in there and not go too far. This is a larger cone. It's from white pine. If you were doing a larger arrangement, you could probably get away with it if you tucked those in. You know, you could see how they can kind of create a little bit of length. They're long without being super bulky, which is sort of why I like them. Again, I would normally wire these and put them in, especially if you're going to gift this. If it's just on your own table for your own purposes, and you're just building it and it's going to sit there, they'll actually sit in there not too bad. Very different from a wreath or from an outdoor arrangement where they got to take wind and they've got to take all that abuse. This is one of those times where you can sort of tuck things in and that they'll do okay. You could use ribbon in this if you wanted. This is a spot where I would love to see a few just little fancy doodads. This is where you can add some of the really special things. Let's say you have ornaments that have been handed down through the years, things that are really special to you. Maybe you have, jewelry even from a mom or a grandmother that would add a little bit of bling. It's a great way to really call attention to it because when it sits in the center of your table with everyone around to admire, it's a wonderful conversation to have. It's a wonderful way to include the people in your life that maybe are no longer with us as part of that celebration. And so I highly encourage people to sort of add in. I'm just thinking about someone I know who has a very, very unique angel ornament, and they add it in on their table somewhere every year. And it's so special and it's unique and it's lovely. So yeah, I'm encouraging you to just sort of include those sort of important things. So for your ornaments, and again, this is really hard to show just with a camera. I've used just a small piece of that paddle wire. What I like about the wire is it's green, it sort of disappears into nothing. And I have just gone through the tops of those. I like things in threes. Again, it's a design rule that you are welcome to break if you like. And I'm just going to wire those together. Then what I generally do is I get just a leftover stick. I like to use dogwood. It's nice and straight, and I'll go in there nice. And I'm just going to take that wire and just sort of wire it on there. And this is how you would do pine cones if you wanted to wire those in. But I find that these, they're harder to sort of tuck in. So you've got them sort of on your stick. You can put those in there. And it just adds a little bit of bling, a little bit of pizzazz. I'm going to add one more group, I think. Again, I would probably stick to threes and add, 3 groups on either side, or a couple of groupings of Christmas balls and a beautiful ribbon that sort of, it could wind its way through the arrangement.
Lynn, you're doing great. I just wanted to mention you have about 2 more minutes left.
Oh, thank you very much. I keep looking at my time and thinking, oh, I don't know how accurate I am. We can wrap it up in 2 minutes. Okay. So hopefully this inspires you. One, to go out and take a look in your backyard on your property. Maybe if you don't have a lot of stuff, maybe you can go, to a wilderness area. Of course, always be respectful. Ask for permission if you need to get a few greens, or maybe you're just going to visit your local garden center or florist to pick up a few things. Again, I love to share that with a friend because, things aren't getting any cheaper, and you can see these arrangements don't really need a whole lot. So it's great to go with a friend. They buy 2 bunches, you buy 2 bunches, and then you divvy them up so that you've got as much diversity as possible in your arrangement. We're just going to put that in there again for a little bit of bling. Yeah, and that's all there is to it. So anyway, thank you so much for your attention. And I'm going to stick around for a while to field some questions. And so I encourage you to just fire them off, and I'm more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn. I'd like to thank